Hello, everybody. It's Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat, and just want to give you a reminder to click on the subscribe button if you'd like to subscribe to future episodes, and also the notification bell in the upper right if you would like to get those notifications. Today's topic is the ideology of Confederate statue destruction. And let me just pull up my notes and we'll begin with that. Few popular commentators have said anything insightful about Confederate statue destruction, but last Thursday, Michael Knowles showed he is an exception. When commenting upon the vote approving House Bill 3005 to remove statues in the Capitol building of anyone who had served the Confederacy, he questioned the wisdom of Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy's public statement explaining his vote in favor of the bill. McCarthy remarked that all of the statues to be removed under the bill represented Democrat politicians who were racist. He then cited Democrat support today for critical race theory, which is anti-white racism, thereby attempting to color Democrats as perpetual racists. Knowles commented that the tactic is useless because modern Democrats and their media allies feel no responsibility for the conduct of Democrats in the 19th century. They will shrug it off as a pathetic attempt to mislabel their party as forever racist, notwithstanding that 90% of blacks vote Democrat. As Knowles put it, quote, "I don't think the Democrats care that any of the so-called bad people in history were Democrats. I think they just want to tear down our nation's history. The whole point of the statues was to bring our country together. Tearing down our history, especially history that was put up to reconcile the North and the South, is just a bad idea. It is part of the broader, ruthless, withering criticism of the country attempting to reframe our history to portray America as the bad guys, which is the entire point of the New York Times 1619 Project. McCarthy and other Republicans should realize that these little cheap rhetorical attempts to label Democrats as constantly racist are not going to work." Close quote. Knowles's point is that the left has adopted an ideology that is radically different from tradition. Ideology affects our lives without us even knowing it. It affects our attitudes the same way. Fish, for example, are unaware that water dominates their environment, like we are similarly unaware that air dominates ours. Similarly, traditional American ideology considers our nation to be fundamentally good. In contrast, today's leftist ideology studies American history deliberately to discover the sinister side of every event. Instead of recognizing the Transcontinental Railroad as a triumph, for example, it's interpreted as an act of genocide against Indians. Starting in the 1960s, a growing obsession with America's faults transformed American history into a study of victimology. Its purpose was to identify victims and grant them the social currency to buy unearned power merely based upon their sex or skin color. Consider the case of Chicago's black female mayor today. When recently asked how much of the criticism she has been getting results from her race and gender, she answered, quote, "about 99%, close quote. Similarly, only after her black husband became president-elect did Michelle Obama admit to being proud of America for the first time in her adult life. When she attended Princeton University in the early 1980s, blacks were a minority, whereas the incoming freshman class this year is nearly 70% people, quote, "of color," close quote. In short, American meritocracy is being replaced by privilege for the so-called victim classes. That's why Kamala Harris is vice president, even though her 2020 presidential campaign fell apart before the first test of the Iowa caucuses. The attack on Confederate statues was an early warning sign of an attack on Western civilization. Since the civilization was created by white men, it is falsely judged to be inherently evil. Never mind, it is responsible for nearly all of our technological advances and also our government advances in government. The progress in physics, mathematics, and chemistry that enable today's technological marvels marvels largely originated in Western civilization. As I sit at my desk, I can thank white men for the internet, computer, iPhone, laser printer, LCD screen, light bulb, household electrical wiring, carpet, furniture, air conditioning, plumbing, hot water tank, and even my clothing. The drive to reframe Western civilization as bad is not only ridiculous, but also evil. One way to gauge its progress is to watch for escalation of statue destruction. When statues of Jefferson, Washington, and Lincoln start coming down, the disease may become life threatening. Historically, statue destruction is followed by bloodshed. I recently listened to Brian Kilmeade interview Glenn Loury, who is a senior Black economics professor at Brown University. An edited version of Lowry's remarks on May 27th are as follows. Quote, I am worried about the narrative that is evolving among the critical race theory advocates. They are overplaying their hand. They are inviting a backlash. They are going to put up, people are not going to put up with this. They are essentializing race. They are obsessed with race. Critical race theory reminds me of McCarthyism. Instead of hunting for communists everywhere, as did McCarthy, critical race theorists are hunting for people who don't know the right word to say. Whites are being accused of racism for simply wanting to be themselves. Critical race theory is the Democrats' big lie. They are trying to drive Black people to vote Democratic because the party doesn't really have a viable economic strategy without winning 90% of the Black votes. Republicans should realize that the cultural genocide behind the destruction of Confederate memorials is a leading indicator of a trend towards hatred of America. By dumping on the South, Kevin McCarthy risks alienating a geographic sector of the party that supports traditional American values. Instead, he turned his back on North-South reconciliation for an ineffective rhetorical jab against the Democrats. Now, considering 19th century Democrats, if you want to understand why the South supported 19th century Democrats, you can get that out of my book, Southern Reconstruction. You can buy it at Amazon for $22 or Barnes & Noble for $22. But if you'd like to get an autographed copy, you can get it from me. Just email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _ Leigh, L-E-I-G-H at me.com. And if you live here in the United States, I will sell it to you for $25, which includes shipping. Okay, that's our show for today, and thanks for watching.